Tonight, we are diving deep into the shadows of power with Tulsi Gabbard's recent release of the ODNI report in July 2025, and then the explosive Durham annex declassified just a few weeks ago. We are now we're getting an unprecedented glimpse into the deep state. We can look now into that shadowy network of bureaucrats and intelligence operators, NGOs, and global influencers who the press, and you will understand why tonight, the press has been saying they don't exist. We've been saying there's something there. Somebody's pulling the strings behind the scenes. Well, tonight we have gone for weeks over these documents, and then we have linked them with our researchers and gone over them again and again, and we went back in the past. Tonight, we are going to expose the manipulations like the Russia hoax against Trump. But that's nothing. Tonight, we're going to show you how they connect to a web of past scandals, including Ukraine's 2014 revolution, the Arab Spring, all of the color revolutions. You are going to see first, part one, we're going to show you the deep state machine, how it works. Then we're going to show you who is working it. And then finally, in an amazing, this will blow your mind. We're going to take you to what they have been doing since, I think, 2012. And it's all the same people. Tonight, we will put it all into context, because if we don't understand this machine, it will continue to undermine our republic and our freedom. We will break it down the old-fashioned way tonight with a whole buttload of chalkboards. We will connect all of the dots tonight as we unmask the deep state. Well, hello, America. This is going to be a wild ride, and I pray that I can present this in a way that you will understand, because I'm just starting to really understand it myself. But once you do, everything opens up. Your whole world changes. You understand what's happening, why it's happening, and who's doing it. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is this deep state that we've been hearing about? Well, it is not some wild conspiracy. It is a real network of entrenched power players operating with little oversight, influencing everything from elections to foreign revolutions. And this is thanks to Tulsi Gabbard's ODNI report and the Durham annex. These have both been declassified. This is proof now how it works. And we began to go through, and it connects so many dots. And we found what I found back in 2009 or 10. It's a largish but small group of people that are really doing this. A lot of the people in the government that are involved might think that they're just doing the right thing and this is all organic, but it is not, as you will see. These two documents have shown the inner workings of the deep state in a way we have never been allowed to see before or given access to previously. It describes a complicated web of government figureheads, bureaucratic institutions, think tanks, NGOs, and various funding mechanisms that enable a parallel government to usurp the power of the elected government. A lot of people won't buy into this, and I know that. But tonight I can say to you, I have all of the evidence. This is no longer a theory. This is now a proven fact. So let me walk you over to chalkboard number one. This is the deep state machine. So the deep state machine, how does this work? Okay. At the core, it is just really a self-reinforcing ecosystem. It is a living, breathing, and growing organism. I wanted you to take a look at this. This is agencies like the CIA, FBI, NSA, and the ODNI. They feed intel, often right here, to the NGOs. So these agencies, this is where it's planned, this is where it's hatched, somewhere in here, okay? And then it's fed down to the next level, to the NGOs, to the think tanks. These groups launder it into independent reports. So all of a sudden, the NGO, let's say the NED, or let's say it's a law firm, Fusion GPS, or the Atlantic Council, or a defense contractor like Raytheon, or just the media, they get the story passed down to them. These players may be involved, they may be hapless dupes, but it's fed down to them. And then, have you ever worked at a place that had a consultant come in and do research? And it's my experience, at least, that consultant always leaves verifying what the boss thought was going on. I've never had a consultant where I'm like, yeah, well, that's independent. They really got that one. It's always been, they're just reinforcing. That's what's happening here. This is passed down here just to reinforce and give this answer down to the third level, okay? And that's the media. It amplifies. They cite anonymous sources. It's narrative engineering at its finest. And in the ODNI report released by Tulsi Gabbard last month, details on how this works, how the 2016 intelligence community assessment on Russian interference was manipulated to target Trump. But I also believe to kick the dust and the trail clean for what I'm going to show you on the other two chalkboards tonight. On December 9th, 2016, despite previous analysis that Russia did not manipulate the election, Obama's security team met in the Situation Room to discuss a new approach. The attendees included Susan Rice, James Clapper, Andrew McCabe, John Brennan, Ben Rhodes, Loretta Lynch, Jay Johnson, John Kerry, Victoria Nuland. Remember those names, okay? And they're all basically members from all of these agencies with big, scary names, the three-letter agencies we've come to expect. Now, this time, new marching orders were given. Now the goal was to change the framing. Russia had to be the bad guy, and their chosen candidate would be President Donald Trump. Quote, "The IC is prepared to produce an assessment per the president's request that pulls together the information we have on the tools Moscow used and the actions it took to influence the 2016 election." Notice it doesn't say that this is based on new information or new intelligence. We have a new whistleblower. We've got some super secret intercepts that prove whatever. None of that. This came per the president's request. Obama was unhappy and the witch hunt commenced, or should I say the coup commenced, because this is what it was. Any dissenting views, they were suppressed. The Durham annex goes further. It reveals how the FBI failures, when they failed to prove Clinton's plan to link Trump to Russia, they refused to consider the intelligence to be credible, even though the CIA was all but screaming to them that it was credible. But here, black and white, redacted, as they like to do. But how do they operate? Okay, levers of operation. So let's just take the Donald Trump thing. These guys decided, no, this doesn't fit the narrative. We want to go for this narrative. So the boss, the president, said, oh, we need this narrative. So these guys went down and they fed a bunch of things, Fusion GPS, the think tanks, the media, sources, confidential sources, unnamed sources tell us that Donald Trump is being investigated. So they're feeding it here. These guys, if they are hapless dupes, they're really stupid at this point. But I believe they know what they're doing because they keep getting it and going from the very same source. Then the levers of operation. The levers of operation is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the power of the impact comes. The first thing to do is surveillance. Now remember, just like that consultant that goes to your office and finds what the boss is looking, they are not actually doing surveillance and going and getting a FISA because they have information. They are looking for information and they're looking for a specific answer. So the FISA warrants are based on unverified documents like Christopher Steele, which started up here, came down to Christopher Steele, then went down to the media, then went to FISA. And remember, this was funded by Clinton's campaign through Perkins Coie. This one, private company law firms, Fusion GPS, Perkins Coie. And the Durham investigation showed how it was weaponized through Russiagate. So the FBI goes to the FISA courts, and they can't get what they need to tell the FISA court to be able to get a wiretap. So somebody in the FBI actually alters the documents to ensure the FISA applications on President Trump went forward. Second, election interference. Right here. The 51 Intel experts, remember that? 51 Intel officials labeling the Hunter Biden laptop Russian disinformation. Remember that in 2020? That is straight from the playbook exposed in these reports. According to the polls, 79% of the country believed that truthful coverage over Hunter's laptop would have changed their vote. But we didn't get truthful coverage. We got deep state manipulation. We got propaganda from 51 intelligence officials who we all trust because we're dopes at this point. And the media did what they were told. Disinformation. Remember, all Twitter and everybody says, well, the FBI came to us and said this was going to be coming out. They fed that down here, and they fed it down here. Now, the third part is funding, and this is amazing. Tax dollars flow through agencies like USAID and the State Department to NGOs. We're going to get deeper into that later, but here's a teaser. USAID funneled $270 million to George Soros adjacent organizations for democracy, programs for democracy all over the world. And don't forget the media coordination. Remember that meeting in Obama's White House with all of his national security heads? The people that day, up until that day, all of them had been saying Russia was not a threat. They were not an election threat. Well, the new marching orders came through and the narrative shifted. Didn't really take very long. And remember, not because of intelligence, but because the president directed them to change it. Guess what the media reported. On the same exact day, this article. Secret CIA assessment says Russia was trying to help Trump win the White House. How could they on the same day? He just said, this is what I want. Somebody went out and fed it to the media and they amplified it and we're off to the races. Now, let's zoom out a bit on the chalkboard. Who are the organizations involved? At the top, we have the government core. We have CIA, DNI, FBI, DOJ, and DHS. Next, the next layer, we have the NGOs. That's like the Soros Open Society Foundation and about 5 million others that the State Department and USAID have used for things like democracy building. Next, we have the think tanks. The Durham annex brought this little wing of the deep state out fully into public view. Apparently, multiple highly respected think tanks were allegedly read in on Hillary Clinton's plan. They included the Open Society Foundation, the Atlantic Council, the Carnegie Endowment, and the Center for New American Security. So Durham's annex just called them collectively think tanks. But we can also potentially add in others that appear to have deep state motivations. Organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, Brookings, the Stanford Internet Observatory, they all at least appear to launder research out to the public. This is a massive propaganda. The guys at the top come up with the narrative. They get people to prove it, leak it. The media gets everybody juiced up to believe it. Then you have the media, surveillance, and the unnamed officials, and you have powerful money behind that, pushing it through. So there's no way to not believe it. You've been hypnotized. This is propaganda. Now, the last on this list, the Stanford Internet Observatory. It was outed by Michael Schellenberger's team for being part of a censorship program with the Department of Homeland Security. Now, let's not forget law firms like Perkins Coie, despite everything else that's been linked to them. Who did they hire again? Oh, yeah, that's right. Fusion GPS. And we can't forget the defense contractors. Booz Allen employed Edward Snowden. And what do we know what he exposed? There's also things we haven't really learned about yet. How far does this alliance between spying intelligence, the intelligence community, potential domestic operations go with just our defense contractors? Did you know that Raytheon was mentioned multiple times in WikiLeaks disclosures of the CIA's classified cyber program known as Vault 7? That's a whole episode. And lastly, we have foreign allies. They're up here with the government agents. These foreign allies. I mean, no way, right? I mean, they wouldn't dare get involved. Oh, wait a minute. Let me look at this story. What is it? British spies were first to spot Trump team's links with Russia. So you have foreign allies jumping in and helping. The UK, in this particular case. The UK's version of the NSA, the GCHQ, alerted Obama's team in 2015. Now that's interesting, especially since we now know this was a giant operation cooked up by the Hillary Clinton team, then seemingly perpetrated by Obama. The deep state isn't just made in America. We know this because we watched what was happening over in England. And we're watching how laws are passed in every country in the Western world. The same laws, the same. We saw 3 or 4 heads of state elected under the banner of Build Back Better. It's all connected. So why now? Well, Gabbard's ODNI release and Durham's annex are the wake-up calls. They show how the Obama-era national security leaders orchestrated a Russian hoax to subvert Trump. But this isn't new. We'll show all of this later in the show because there's a really distinct pattern. It's not just about that. We trace this back through history. This machine thrives on secrecy. It is very complicated. It's hard to understand, but they're counting on you giving up, not understanding it. With all of these declassifications, the veil is lifting. Stay with us because I'm going to go to the second chalkboard where I'm going to name names and you follow the money. Next. You wake up every morning wondering how pain is going to affect your day? Michael from Connecticut used to, not anymore. Let me tell you his relief factor story. Michael was dealing with elbow pain, which made everything, using his hand and his arm, really, really hard until he started taking relief factor. Michael wrote and he said, "My elbow pain and all my pain has just gone away. All my other aches and pains went away too. On top of that, I have more energy." If you are living with aches and pains, see how Relief Factor, a daily drug-free supplement, can help you just feel better and live better. Join the over 1 million people who've turned to Relief Factor just like Michael. Call them now and try their 3-week quick start for $19.95, less than $1 a day. Just don't let pain keep you from living every day the way you want. Visit relieffactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF, 800-4-RELIEF. These two documents are so instrumental. They're the backbone of everything that we're seeing tonight. So we've just defined the deep state machine. But now let's put faces and dollars to it. Let's go to chalkboard number 2. Chalkboard number 2 is the web of influence. This is where the ODNI report and the Durham annex really shines a light on all of the operatives. And let's start here with the kingpins, okay? John Brennan, Obama's CIA director, he led the manipulated ICA, the intelligence community assessment on Russia. Tulsi Gabbard's ODNI release puts him right square at the top. Then you have James Clapper. He was the DNI. He signed off on that intelligence report, but he also was part of the 51 intelligence officials that lied about the Hunter Biden laptop from hell. That shows that even though some of these people are no longer in office, they still manipulate behind the scenes. John Brennan can still, when he was here originally, he could go right down to the media. But now he's out. But he can still be seen on cable news, pushing along a narrative. James Comey, FBI director, he oversaw Crossfire Hurricane. He also, according to the Durham annex, closed down an investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server due to the explosive nature of the sensitive intelligence that revealed Hillary's plan was to smear Trump. And Hillary Clinton, well, her campaign funded the Steele dossier per Durham. The annex specifically details her plan to tie Trump to Russia and how her campaign was allegedly allied within people in the Obama administration. That indeed, the Attorney General Loretta Lynch was part of that. And then there was George Soros. George Soros, by the way, his birthday was yesterday. He's 95, still kicking, but he's able to see his whole life unravel and his empire begin to crumble. But he is the founder of the Open Society Foundation. The annex names his organization in the confidential DNC talks for the smear on Donald Trump. As of 2023, George Soros was one of the Center for American Progress's Action Fund, one of the largest single donors. CAP Action. It was one of the most influential private organizations pushing the Russian collusion narrative. Remember, we get the plan, it comes down to places like Open Society, and then it's pushed down even more. You get the intel officers, you get the surveillance, you get the media. Now, one of their initiatives at the time was the Moscow Project. It's amazing that the internet is still forever, right? I mean, it's still online, and if you read it, it's actually pretty hilarious because, well, other operatives include Peter Strzok, Lisa Page at the FBI, Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, Hillary Clinton's aide tied to the hoax planning. And Sullivan's name began to first pop up around Russiagate, the hoax back in 2021. And I will tell you, I mean, get the feeling that there's a reason he constantly floats from one administration to the next, but we'll have to look more into that. Then you have Christopher Steele, the MI6 alum who authored the Steele dossier. Mark Milley, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm sorry, but if you have a headline like this one, secretly calling China over fears Trump could spark war, I mean, you're going to get added to the deep state candidate list every time. I think it's an automatic. Then you have Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe was the director of the, or deputy director of the FBI. This one is obvious for being the dude that signed the bogus FISA warrants against Trump's staff. Remember, they doctored them. They changed them. Took a little whiteout, then retyped them and changed them. He signed them. Then they went to get the FISA warrant. And then there's this little nugget. The text from Peter Strzok to Lisa Page, quote, "I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected. But I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. Wow. Now, McCabe says, I don't remember that at all. What? I don't remember that conversation. But two other FBI employees do remember. But I guess he would deny that too. And now the congressional enablers. You have Adam Schiff. This guy is in real trouble. He was pushing the Russia hoax as the chair of the Intelligence Committee. He was also alleged this week to be responsible for the leaks of intelligence directly from the Intel Committee. So he's the guy who was leaking it. And we have it now, dead to rights. And the FBI ignored it. And yet he's still in office. Then you have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They were the gang of 8 members together, so you knew the truth, but pushed the Russia hoax right in your face anyway. They're also still in office. Senator Mark Warren, he sent a text message to the Russian oligarch. Not a problem, right? You know what? You should really speak to Christopher Steele. Quote, "We have so much to discuss. We need to be careful, but we can help our country." That's what Warner wrote. The reply came back from the Russian oligarch, "I'm in." Also, he's still in office. Now, I'm sure this list could go on and on and on. We could add Liz Cheney and Mitch McConnell, maybe, I don't know. But the funders, The funders are on the board that we know. The Open Society Foundation. This is George Soros. As I mentioned earlier, USAID funneled $270 million to George Soros adjacent organizations for democracy programs all over the world. And this isn't even a fraction of it. I'll get to more later on in the show. But the Tides Foundation, Arabella Advisors, when you want your money to go dark, these are the places that you immediately send them to. You got the Gates Foundation. The trail on this one's way deep. In 2020 alone, they funneled $127 million through the Arabella network. Oh, isn't that weird? That's the COVID year, isn't it? In total, Bill Gates and his foundation is Arabella's single largest donor, totaling nearly $500 million. The MacArthur Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, you got these two clowns. They fund some of the think tanks that I've mentioned tonight, like the Council on Foreign Relations. But let's not forget the government funding pipelines. This is where USAID comes in. USAID channels tax dollars to groups like those associated with Open Society, for democracy abroad. But it boomerangs and it comes back to us domestically. The State Department also funds groups like this. They fund the National Endowment for Democracy, NED. It's a quasi-government entity with $315 million budget for influence operations. These also come back around and boomerang domestically. Then the Pentagon. Well, let's just say this. From 2020 to 2024, the Pentagon awarded private military contracts of over $2.4 trillion. They also fund, as the Durham annex calls, the think tanks, or at least some of them. And they've been doing that since 2019. The Pentagon has funded $1.4 billion towards the think tanks. The Department of Homeland Security funded multiple entities for censorship on American citizens. And they were working right with the Brits. If you're a fan of Data Republican, who I absolutely love, you can use her website and it'll track all of these funding flows. And it shows how your taxes fund this machine. For example, Soros's Open Society Foundation, engineering political disruption in Eastern Europe. Did you know that? Oh, yeah, you watched the show. You did know that a long time ago. We're going to get to that and how it all ties in after the break. But the web is not accidental. It is designed for control. The Durham Annex actually helped expose a lot, way more that's being reported, and it is all connected. Now, when we come back, I'm going to show you how this network fuels global instability, scandal. We've been covering this for a very long time, but because of these two reports, we now have the proof that this is fact. And I'll show you how it all comes together and what they've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years next. So there are two types of phone companies in America. One type takes your hard-earned money and quietly sends it off to, fund politicians and lobbyists and activists that you don't believe in at all. And then there's the other kind that sends your money to organizations that defend the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, heck, all of the amendments. Okay, that type is Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile was built for people just like you, people who believe in this country, who believe in faith and family, and who are tired of being forced to finance the destruction of those values just to get a cell phone signal. With Patriot Mobile, you get the same great 5G service and the same towers, the same coverage as the other guys, but your money goes somewhere different. It supports pro-life organization. It defends religious liberty. It helps fund lawsuits that fight back against the radical left. And it supports our military and our police and our first responders. These days, you probably have to have a phone, but you do not have to compromise your values to get the phone. So go to patriotmobile.com/Beck or call 972-PATRIOT. Use the promo code Beck and get a free month of service. patriotmobile.com/Beck or call 972-PATRIOT. Welcome back. All right. So we have the machine, and now we have the players. Now let's look at the things that they've been doing for the past 10 plus years. All of these players and organizations have involved in some way or another. The deep state has left a trail, and it may not have started as something that they could use internally. I think they did do that, but they were learning. They used the rest of the world to learn, and it's easily tracked throughout our history, okay? So we now know what to look for. We know the parts within the machine. So now it should be pretty easy to trace the entire operation, right? And that's chalkboard 3. This is the deep state timeline over the last 20 plus years. And these things were not isolated. They're patterns of the US backed interference, exposed by leaks, Freedom of Information Act, and now disclosures like the Durham annex and Tulsi Gabbard's her ODNI report that she released. And it all started, this is as far back as we've gone, but we think it all started about 2000. And there was the Serbia bulldozer revolution. I don't really even remember this. But I'm starting with this event because it provides a very successful template for color revolution. And this is the template that is followed over and over and over again. And you will actually see the characteristics of it happening here at home by the time we get there. Now, USAID, they use their insane budget and the tax dollar funneling system through organizations like the National Endowment for Democracy. Why? Well, let's see if this sounds familiar, like a trend that we've seen over the years, both at home and abroad. They train street activists to overthrow the ruling government. How do we know they did this? Well, it's nothing classified. It's not hidden in some vault below the State Department. They bragged about it and used it as a case study on their website. But they didn't do it alone. Remember, the deep state, this machine here, it has multiple parts. We've already identified them. They got help from people like George Soros and his foundation, that network. Color Revolution also enlisted the help of private U.S. companies. WikiLeaks exposed email correspondence between the intelligence firm Stratfor and one of the regime change NGOs on the ground. Now, a few years later, this correspondence continued, this time with another blueprint. They wanted to pull off a similar operation in Venezuela. But the result was a successful ouster of the Serbian government. Now they've done it twice. Now everything, the template's really set. So in 2003, Georgia's Rose Revolution began. The Serbian template was followed almost exactly. The U.S. tax dollars flowed into Serbia. The George Soros Foundation was linked to the main activists on the ground. We were there with the State Department, and the result, success. A pro-Western government was installed. Then you get here, the Orange Revolution, 2004. This is one of the first revolutions with the Ukraine. Millions of tax dollars flowed into the first color revolution in Ukraine, and the usual suspects all involved yet again. And the reporting from that time was very matter-of-fact about what was happening. U.S.-backed color revolutions were popping up now all over, and America was using the Serbian template to upend the world piece by piece. Got it? 2000, 2003, 2004. Now the machine it's learned enough to get a little arrogant and say, I think we can do more. And they leveraged their funding mechanisms through organizations that we're now hearing about, the National Endowment for Democracy, Freedom House, on and on. George Soros involved there again. Then you get to the Arab Spring. And the Arab Spring, we were told by the media operatives that this was all spontaneous. Well, now we hear that all the time, and when you hear somebody say, this is spontaneous and mainly peaceful, it's the exact opposite. I talked about the Arab Spring for years. The State Department, under Obama, USAID, NED, all of them, they were on the ground training activists all over the region. I didn't know that at the time. The Serbian template was for a single country, but it was now being used to destabilize multiple continents with our tax dollars. When I put up on the chalkboard that the destabilization of Europe and the Western world would happen, I never thought it would be funded by us with our dollars. And as usual, in that one, George Soros was also involved. 2014, Ukraine, the maiden. Now, this is the big one. Check out my Ukrainian chalkboards to get the full deep dive on the deep state and what it was up to in Ukraine. This one is incredible. This was a U.S.-backed color revolution with exactly the same players, utilizing the same funding, the same money flows, the same organizations. And leaked emails now show George Soros took a particularly personal role in the rebuilding and organization of the cleanup effort that went with the new regime. Then you have Macedonia. This is 2012 to 2016. The State Department and USAID gave $5 million to George Soros and his Open Society Foundation. They gave it in Macedonia for protests against conservatives. A FOIA from Judicial Watch showed how the George Soros group was translating Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals for Macedonian street activists. I could go on with this pipeline. There's a pattern over 20 years. It's been the same. The deep state uses the same funding mechanisms, the same NGOs, the same think tanks, and the same outside sources like George Soros. Deep state operations have been and are still funded by our tax dollars through entities like USAID, the State Department, NED. That money is then laundered out to organizations like the Open Society Foundation and to other NGOs on the streets. The think tanks like the Atlantic Council, Carnegie, and others, they all advise on policies. But this now appears like nothing more than laundered thought directly from an unelected parallel government inside called the deep state. With the new releases of both the ODNI report and the Durham annex, you now have a much more clearer picture than we've ever had before. By the way, the one after Macedonia, everything that they learned, same players, same exact players, did all of this without you even knowing about it. And what was their next revolution? Because it also happened in 2016. It was the election here. They used all of the same things on you. This time with your money, they used propaganda and tried to overthrow your will. So what was Russiagate really all about? Well, it was the domestic flip of everything you see up here on the chalkboard. It was first an attempt to subvert an election. And when that failed, it became a deep state operation of regime change. Somebody who really knows this really well joins me in a minute. Hang on. So when Moxie started their pest control 25 years ago, their goal was to raise a standard on an industry known for being a little hit and miss. Moxie is not just pest control. They are trained problem solvers, pest experts who believe that the small gestures matter. Things like closing gates behind them, wearing shoe coverings when they walk into your house, leaving a thoughtful note and saying, this is what was done and here's when we're going to be back. And little things like showing up on time, doing the job right, and also standing behind their work because they believe peace of mind is not a luxury. Every Moxie technician trains daily on leading edge techniques. And that's not just for show. It's to make sure you get the best possible results every time. So whether you're dealing with ants or roaches or spiders or something stranger, Moxie's approach isn't patchwork. It's strategic, it's personalized, and it's built to help you love your home again. Moxie is kind, they're competent, and they're committed to doing the right thing for their customers and for their team and their community. Right now, you can celebrate with Moxie. They're 25 years in business. You can get your first pest control service for just $25. So visit moxieservices.com/Beck, moxieservices.com/Beck, and use the promo code Beck for $25. Joining me now is an award-winning investigative journalist when that used to mean something. He has been on the very front lines in exposing everything from the early days of the Ukraine scandals to Russiagate. He has been consistent with his fearlessness to never stop asking the hard questions, and he has been consistent no matter where he has worked, including the AP, Washington Post, The Hill, and now as the CEO and editor-in-chief of JustTheNews.com. John Solomon, thank you so much for joining me. John, we have talked several times about this, and you're deep in this every day. We started going back and looking for the same characters. We just outlined it on our chalkboard. And the color revolution, it was a theory, but now we can prove it. The color revolutions they were doing since the year 2000, they learned. And then by the time we get to 2016, I really think they just went, we can do that here. And they turned that whole revolutionary machine on the American people using the Americans' money.
And the most awesome powers that the American people gave to their law enforcement intelligence communities. I mean, what the story of Russiagate and everything that follows from it is, for the first time in our history, we took a dirty political trick, which has always been in our politics all the way back to the 1790s.
Right.
And we allowed the FBI and the CIA to legitimize and extend that political dirty trick into an illusion. We used the best tools of psychological operations that we would unfold on an enemy during warfare, and we used it on our American people. We had them believe that the man they had just elected was a Russian stooge of Vladimir Putin when there wasn't an iota of evidence. And they were able to do that by leaking little fragments of things that had already been discredited, but leaking it belatedly to a gullible media. And as a result, the American people were put through 2.5 years of turmoil that was completely unnecessary. It takes Watergate, where Richard Nixon for a moment considered asking the CIA to interfere with the FBI investigation of the break-in, and it blows past that. Basically, the CIA and the FBI are all in on helping Hillary Clinton create the illusion that Donald Trump was the stooge, and it doesn't stop at the election, where most political dirty tricks end. It goes through 2.5 years of the first presidency of Donald Trump.
Would you describe this as an attempt of a color revolution on America to overthrow the will of the people? Would you go that far?
I will tell you what my sources have told me. And the most seminal moment in why I dug in so hard occurred in March of 2017, when 2 intelligence officers showed up at my house as I was getting off Fox News and going home. They were in my driveway when I got there, and they looked me in the eye and they said, "John, you're at the tip of a very big mountain, and if you dig all the way down, you're going to find one of the greatest political scandals in history." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I mean, I just did a story on unmasking. That's all I did." Like, listen, you're at the top of something. And what they said to me is, what we know happened was that the most awesome tools that the American people gave the intelligence agencies have been turned against the American people to carry out a political illusion, a political dirty trick. And you've got to get to the bottom of it. And I said, why? Why do I got to get to the bottom of it? Like, because if we continue to abuse these tools, they will be taken away from us, and none of us will sleep safer at night. We'll be more prone to foreign threats because we abuse these tools for something that had nothing to do with national security. It had to do with the political security of the Democratic Party. That has never left my mind in the last almost 8 years that I've been reporting on this story.
John, there's part of the story that I have not figured out, because I don't even remember if I reported on it, and I can't believe I wouldn't have. What was the excuse for Barack Obama overturning the law that I think came from the 1940s, early 1950s, that you could not use propaganda on the American people? So the government couldn't use propaganda. That seems like, I can't believe I missed that story somehow or another. What was the reason they said, no, we can use propaganda on the American people? And why haven't we shut that one off?
To be honest, I haven't really looked that closely. The thing I looked more closely at, and perhaps I've missed it as well, was the changes in unmasking that allowed the government to start unmasking the intercepted communications of Americans overseas and treat them like they were a courtless wiretapping system. And I think that that's how they invented the Russia collusion case. I think when we're done, the idea of how we're going to hang a fake Russian shingle on Donald Trump's house was probably born on some unmasked conversations, and then they weaved it into a narrative. That should be very scary to us. There are other changes that Obama made. I'm not as familiar about the propaganda change. I'll have to look at that to read it out. But listen, whether they changed the rule or not, they clearly carried out one of the greatest propaganda and psychological operations tricks in American history. And it was done by our intelligence community on our people.
I mean, you keep saying it was done. It's still happening. It's still happening.
To some degree it is.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, these people are all still involved in the system one way or another. They're still being the ones that, are talking to the media. They're the experts on all of this. We're going to the people. I know. We're going to the people who are accused and asking them to vouch for the other guys that were on the team who were accused. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. Is the press, are they ever going to wake up to this?
No, because they were complicit, right? They can't admit because the basic tenets of their profession were so violated. People like the New York Times, which wrote a front page story, never to be retracted. The Pulitzers that gave awards to a fake scandals coverage. The contradictions, the dishonest headlines, the anonymous sources. So no, the press is never going to give up on it. But at the same fact, we have, one of the differences from 20 years ago, because you went out and created your own thing and I created my thing, we have now made the gatekeepers in the legacy media irrelevant. We can go around them to get the American people the truth. That is a powerful opportunity for us to get the American people the truth. I think the legacy media is increasingly irrelevant, and they certainly are no longer a roadblock for us getting out the truth. I think that's an important moment for us.
What is the next thing we look for? What's the next domino to fall?
When you wake up in the morning, you're going to see perhaps the most stunning document I've seen. It's an FBI timeline. It lays out all of the political interference in the other Clinton case that we never talk about. We always talk about Clinton emails, but the bigger case that the FBI had, 3 separate FBI offices were working on political corruption, looking at the Clinton Foundation as a corrupt organization collecting money in a pay-to-play scheme. You're going to know the names of people who said, shut it down, who blocked the FBI from carrying out a lawfully predicated 3 investigations. When you see that, I have to tell you, I knew it existed. I didn't know how dramatic it was. People are going to see that in the morning, and I think it's going to wake us up to the other reality. We protected the Democrats in this same illusion. The goal was not only to harm the Republicans and conservatives, it was to protect Democrats who may have engaged in wrongdoing.
Yeah, I said that earlier in the show, that I think part of it was to kick dust or dirt over the trail. It wasn't just Donald Trump.
That's exactly the right way to look at it.
Yeah. Who's releasing this? Where's this report coming from?
It'll come out from Just the News. It's an FBI document that we've been able to obtain, and it's a timeline. It is chilling to read. It really is.
I would love to have you on the air tomorrow to explain that to me on the radio.
Count me in.
All right, John. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Glenn.
You bet. We look forward to that tomorrow, and I will see you with more on this tomorrow on radio, and we'll see you until then from Dallas. Good night, America.